I think the obvious answer is we need to get a speaker, and hopefully we'll get one by next week. And I'll repeat what I said earlier, which is I think to do that job for anyone, you have to get rid of the motion to vacate, because it puts whoever the speaker is in a hammerlock.
Kevin McCarthy is no longer the Speaker of the House, and the big question is, what happens now? Lawmakers in Congress have announced that McCarthy's unprecedented removal would throw the House into a state of havoc, as Republicans scramble to determine their next steps. Experts even say that the House Speaker could make immediate major changes. Now, with thousands of people voting out Kevin McCarthy, it's an unprecedented development. Now, some representatives, like Nancy Pelosi, might even be named the leader of the House. But House Democrats plan to nominate someone else, Hakeem Jeffries, and the minority leader, to the speakership. However, his win is unlikely since Republicans control the majority. But it is not clear who, if anyone in the House, can earn the majority of votes needed to win the Speaker's race. But McCarthy has purportedly said that he would not run for Speaker again. No other Republicans have yet put themselves forward. Names that have been floated include Representative Stephen Scalise and even top women leadership, like Elise Stefanik. Now, it's unclear how soon McCarthy's ouster, the Republican majority, will begin the process for electing a successor. In January, when the 118th Congress convened, 15 rounds of voting across 4 days were needed for McCarthy to even become the leader. His victory even followed days of negotiating with the far-right members of the House Republican Conference, and in order to win their backing, McCarthy agreed to a number of demands. Chief among them was lowering the threshold for the motion to vacate, which allowed a single member to call for a vote to remove the Speaker. According to Yahoo News, like with the effort to oust McCarthy that played out this week, Gates was at the center of the dispute over the California Republicans' conquest to win the speakership in the first place. He angered some of his Republican colleagues when he voted present on the 14th round, blocking McCarthy's bid and forcing another vote. In the meantime, essentially all of their action in the House will be halted. One deadline is looming. The government will shut down in mid-November after the expiration of a temporary funding measure that Congress approved over the weekend. That's unless Congress can pass another 12 of its year-long spending bills. To continue, a resolution that House lawmakers passed on Saturday keeps the government funded for another 45 days. If at the end of that 45-day period, Congress can come up with another temporary solution, or actually approve the dozen spending bills that would grant the government funding, the nation will be facing another government shutdown. The short-term bill includes $16 billion relief. The containing resolution also extended appropriations for the FFA, and now the IRS is open to the extended year. So let's see what happens, folks. Recent Treasury projections have reinforced the urgency of addressing the debt ceiling. And now they added that they will not be voting for closure on any bill that raises debt ceiling without substantive spending and budget reforms. But the White House has already responded to their statement, accusing the Republican senators of leaving economic livelihood of 1 million Americans at risk. So, even the White House secretary told reporters, at a moment when the country just posted historic job gains, there is no time for the senators to reverse their support for avoiding the default without conditions during the former president's presidency. They need to know the constitutional obligation to pay bills and not unilaterally inflict a recession on the country. Joe Biden is set to sit down with Kevin McCarthy on this, everybody, and talk about this. In an attempt to ease Americans' demand and slow inflation, Powell clarified in the speech that additional rate hikes are on the way, further eroding optimism for a soft landing. Powell also stated, reducing inflation is likely to require a sustained period of below-trend growth. There will be likely some softening of labor market conditions. The Fed has targeted the labor market as a key battleground for fighting inflation, and Powell has cited the massive imbalance of worker supply and labor demand. Government data published last week indicated the U.S. was still touting roughly 2 jobs openings for every available worker, underscoring just how tight the labor market has become. A growth recession could even drive the unemployment rate sharply higher if enough companies lay off workers to bolster their balance sheets. The rate is around 3.7%, just a little above the 5-decade low since before the crisis. To press the fight against inflation that she said is hurting lower-income Americans the most. That will mean more interest rates increases and keeping rates higher for longer. The majority of people now say price increases are causing financial hardship for households, and up to 49% in January and 45% in November. Millions of people are going to see a decrease in their monthly benefit checks. Democrats and Republicans are being urged to approve an expansion of monthly child tax credit payments. A relief proposal has been put forward that would send out $350 checks every month to eligible Americans. And now, new food insecurity data, released by the U.S. Department of Agriculture today, provided the latest evidence that the enhanced child tax credit and other relief programs passed in the first 2 years of the crisis significantly helped millions of people to support their families last year. And with much of the aid now ripped away, households are again struggling to make ends meet. The agency's annual report on food security showed that about 1 in 10 homes, or about 13.5 million households, they didn't have enough food in 2021. Overall food insecurity remained the same from 2020 to 2021 and grew worse for older Americans. The report says that the prevalence of food insecurity declined from 2020 to 2021 for few population subgroups, including households with children under age 18 and with children under age 6. Last year, 6.2% of households with children were unable to provide adequate and nutritious food for their children.
Exhausted and want the government out of their lives, out of our personal lives. And Justice Thomas's opinion about nullifying marriages, about getting rid of birth control, is an extreme overreach. This is a country built on freedom, and it is time for us to stand up. The exhausted majority, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, saying we want limited government and we want it out of the private lives of American citizens, especially the women of the United States. Madam Speaker, I rise to talk about a very important issue in this country. This country is a country that has been and was founded on the idea of freedom. This country has fed more people, clothed more people, cured more people, and liberated more people than all the other countries in the world combined. And the source of American power has always been the great American middle class, which we need to have an aggressive policy to rebuild. And the strength of the American middle class has always been connected to our energy policy. Do we have a policy in this country that will allow us to dominate the world in manufacturing, to dominate the industries of the future, to keep costs low for both business and consumers? And so I'm rising here today in support of this permitting process bill that we will be voting on here this week. This is an important opportunity for us to mobilize and move the natural gas industry in places like Ohio to both reduce costs here for manufacturers and consumers, and for us to export this product abroad to make sure our allies in Europe are able to get cheap natural gas so they're not hooked on Vladimir